Hey, folks, thanks so much for coming to the Capitalism for Good podcast. It's here where we'll focus on exploring how we both make and spend our dollars to benefit the greater good. Today we have Kyle Parsons. He's the founder of Indosole, a recycled footwear brand, and he talks to us about his journey that started in New Hampshire in the United States and then takes him to Bali as he chases a dream that was sparked by one broken flip flop while he was on a trip. In this interview, Kyle talks about persevering through challenges to continuously improve the sustainably manufactured shoe. There's some really clear overlaps with some of the previous interviews, as well as some really interesting words of wisdom about being a good steward of the earth, specifically about some trends in sustainability in different parts of the world. I was really impressed with Kyle, and I'm really happy to share this conversation. Enjoy. Hi, Kyle. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Will you start by just giving us a high-level overview of what Indosole is and how you all got started?
Yeah, hi Andrea. Thanks for having me. Um, yeah, my name's Kyle Parsons. I'm the founder of Indosole, and we are a recycled footwear brand based in Bali, Indonesia, with a global initiative. Our the premise of our brand and how we started it was we prevent waste tires and other waste materials from ending up in landfills, the oceans, and polluting our lands. And we turn those tires and waste materials into functional and fashionable products. Most notably, our tire sold sandals or flip-flops, which is what has put us on the map. We make flip-flops, slides, cross platforms, and kids models. So for men, women, and kids. And like I said, we're based here in Bali, where I'm at right now. I'm American, um, but we've been based in Bali since 2009, and we're actually having our 15th year anniversary party in a couple months here, or in a month, um, here in Bali. We have six of our own retail shops here. They have roughly thirty staff full time, which are a mix of Indonesians, Americans, and Europeans. And then we work closely with a manufacturer and a bunch of suppliers um, based in Bali, but also in Java, in kind of the northern area of Indonesia, which is just a beautiful country and environment to work in with lots of progressive action towards not only recycling materials but also waste prevention and waste management, which it desperately needs because, as you probably have heard, a large amount of the world's pollution exists in Southeast Asia, split between four countries, and Indonesia being one of those. There's just not a lot of education based around where to put your trash and what to do with it. And slowly but surely, that's improving, and there's more and more solutions.
Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about the nitty-gritty of how you guys got started? Did you start by selling in stores, or were you also online, or were you primarily online and then looked at retailers?
Yeah. Well, like many good businesses, they start either on accident or to solve a problem. Um, Mine was probably a combo of the both. But I grew up with a curiosity about Bali. My father had been traveling over here since the 80s, and I grew up in New Hampshire, and between New Hampshire and Massachusetts, in the northeast of the U.S.
Yeah.
But my dad would come home from Bali, which is another world, and he'd bring home T-shirts or wooden barong masks, and I would be dancing around with them as a kid. So Bali always existed in my family. It was a curiosity. I made my first trip in 2004, and I fell in love with the island of Bali and just had everything that I was into. I like surfing. I like you know, colorful culture, beaches, and all that stuff. Um, so I was into it. I was walking down the street, and my flip-flops I was wearing at the time broke. The thong pulled out, so I was then standing there barefoot on the dirty sidewalks, and needed a solution. I need a new pair of sandals. So I walked into a local boutique and found this kind of rustic pair of sandals with a natural weave on top, but on the sole it had a tire. And I'd never seen that before. Thought it was kind of neat, and I just really need a new pair of sandals, so I bought them, and they were really stiff and uncomfortable. So they tore my feet to shreds because they were really uncomfortable. But the idea of the tire really stuck with me because as you notice when you travel in Asia, everybody's riding a motorbike and they're whizzing all over the place. So it got me wondering where all the tires go. So when I did some more research, I found that over 1.5 billion tires each year, end up in landfills or polluting the lands. And they also make a great sole for sandals or shoes. Um, so 2 years passed by. I was literally waking up in the middle of the night with just the feeling that I needed to go back to Bali um, and pursue this sandal project. At the time, I was working in retail as a salesperson, like, representing brands and selling goods into retailers. So I was getting some retail experience and understanding both sides of the business from the brand and also the retailer. That was valuable and would prove valuable later. But so I flew back to Bali in 2006 and, spent my savings just, cruising around trying to find a sandal factory. And kind of, and over time, I was able to make the right connections in Bali and get started with some craftspeople and hand making sandals. So it was a very old-fashioned technique at the beginning of cutting tires into four pieces and then adhering them to the uppers, which were made of various materials. And we were able to make them comfortable enough to be able to launch in 2010 with our first order of 500 pair. I went to the bank and got a $15,000 line of credit, which didn't get us too far, but it was something. And I paid for a first order with that. And then afterwards, I was able to, like, I decided to quit my job um, and kind of go for it. Started raising a little bit of cash, from friends and family, and then working on up to angel investors for some larger checks of like up to $500,000. And we were, off to the races, at least for a little bit. And then, then the bottleneck hit and we weren't really able to satisfy demand, which at first was a good thing because we're like, wow, people actually like these things. Like we're getting orders. That's cool. But the product itself wasn't really that good, even though people are curious, like they really like the story. But what you find in, product-based businesses like in fashion, like the product's got to be good, or else you're going to blow your opportunity, and it's just not going to sell. So we definitely had some of those challenges at the beginning, and as well as the manufacturing and the consistency, um, and that got us like all the way to 2017, where we were barely holding on. We were a tiny business. We were really only doing like under $1 million a year. Um, but just kind of burning through cash and just really trying to make it happen, but struggling. But what we realized is that we needed to change the manufacturing process. We needed to like rip everything up and like rebuild the sandal to make a more conscious sandal, to use 100% of the tire and not waste any parts of the tire by grinding it down. That was the only way we were um, durable tire sole for the sandal, and then making it as comfortable as possible, and the arch support and the consistent footbed and some some fashionable and cool materials that people actually want to wear. So we took a big risk and raised a little more money, took a year off manufacturing, took a year off from doing business in 2017, and then relaunched in 2018, and then slowly just kind of started, you know, building the business and starting to prove the model with our new product, and that's basically the product that we have today. So, um, we've been making improvements as we go and scaling upward. When COVID hit, we got pushed back down, had to really kind of gather our strength and our dignity and battle our way back into the game. Any major retailer we had at that time, we lost, um, pretty much overnight during the COVID era. But we were
Yeah.
able to keep all of our staff. We were able to keep our staff in Bali um, that we had and we cherished and got through it and raised another round of capital in 2022, and then decided that the best bang for our buck was to focus on the Southeast Asia market, which is the heart of the brand, and um, a lot less competition and ability to build a community around the brand, which is so important. So that's what we've been focusing on the last several years, and that's what brings us to the current moment in Bali with six of our own shops, and then exporting product to various areas of the world. So we have a warehouse in Los Angeles that we ship from a 3PL in the US. We have a distributor in Europe, in Dubai, and let's see, Singapore, Taiwan, South America. Um, no, so it's not we're not doing huge business, but we're out there.
That is such an evolution. How, if you had to guess, how many different versions from when you started to now, how many different versions of your products do you think have existed?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Like,
I'd
how
say
many trials?
minimum. Yeah. Let's see. The ones that have actually gone to market um, is three. Let's see, is three main tire technologies that we tried. So the first was motorbike tires, which was just raw motorbike tires because they don't have the steel belted radial in them. And you could cut one tire into four pieces and you can make two pairs of sandals out of the one tire. So that was a great story. It's like two pair saves one tire.
Yeah.
Cool. That was like right when Tom's was becoming hot with the one for one thing, and we're like, wow, maybe this is like a catchy way to spin things. But the reality is that when you take a motorbike tire and you fold it this way, it creates two rails that come down it, and it can be a little bit wobbly. So
Mm.
some of them would come out perfect. If the motorbike tire was really well worn, it would come out nice and
Yeah.
flat, and that was great. But it was really hard to find the really worn one. So, it wasn't a consistent product is the bottom line. So moving on, we then started using car tires, which were car and truck tires. We started die cutting out the sidewall of the tire. And that was really nice because it had a lot of charm. You could read the word Goodyear or Michelin on the bottom, on the sole. And we ran that one for a solid 4 years, and that changed the game because it made the walking surface completely flat while getting more authenticity out of the sole.
Mhm.
But they were still falling apart, and at that time we were realizing, we weren't using 100% of the tire because we still had waste left over because we're only using the sidewall, right? So what do you do with the rest of the tire? So like, okay, if we want to be like real stewards of the earth and really own this story, we got to use as much of the waste material as we can. We got the B Corp certification, and then the third real iteration was, yeah, the pulverizing of the tires and then putting it into a mold where we are now.
So
Yeah.
many people that I talk to are intimidated when they've got this big dream or they've got this idea. They're so intimidated by the challenges and the time and the effort. Like, oh, I could never make it happen. I won't be able to make a living off of it. I don't know how I'll make that happen, which is where like it seems like every founder
Mhm.
starts is like, I just have an idea and I'm going to try to figure it out. How have you pushed through the challenges? I mean, this is, what are we talking? Almost 20 years, 15 years
Yeah.
between when you first like moved to Bali and like had the idea and wanted to get this started to where you are now. Like, how have you persevered through all of that?
It's a great question. And I appreciate that question too. And it just comes down to the three P's, I think is what we like to call it. Like, and it is as the passion, perseverance, and persistence.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just like really just been about the passion for the project and the belief that we're doing something that matters and that if that feels good and that uh, our customers and people around us, when they see it, they really appreciate it and they light up. They're like, "Oh my gosh, that's like that really makes sense." Like that's so cool. Like thanks for doing that. You know. So that's that. I'd say that's a number one thing that's kept us going. Secondarily, as I like to say, is that nothing short of a miracle that we're still around or that we made it 15 years because we went broke so many times. So I've just always said that the universe has wanted us around. It's just sort of somehow found a way for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the midst of all of that, and something that's been on my mind and something that I often talk to the people around me about, and it seems even more, at least right now in the US, it seems even more exaggerated right now, is just the chaos of life, the chaos of not just like
Mhm.
the volatility of the market. I mean, that's definitely a thing, global trade changes, but we also just in general, like e-commerce, the internet, we've become a more connected society, which is fantastic. But I think it also tends to make things complicated because there's just so many more variables out there. And then the current climate just like kind of throws another big giant like winch in the middle of all of that. How have you, throughout all of this chaos, throughout all of your challenges, how do you like internally within your company find and build and maintain stability throughout all of this?
Yeah, by just believing at our core again that we're doing this for a reason, and that's what keeps us going. Because yeah, as you mentioned, you might the political climate may go up and down, or you may have somebody telling you that sustainability or responsible fashion is cool, and then somebody else might come along a year later and tell you it's not cool, or it's a hoax or whatever it is, and you're like, okay, well, you can't listen to them. You just got to do it. Like
Yeah.
we're doing it, and we're growing a small community from the inside out to bigger and bigger, and it's like a magnet. It's like what's gonna stick to the magnet. Not everything is, um, and it's just, I guess, just finding our people.
As you've gone through that like journey to find your people, which I think is just so important. Like who you surround yourself with and the people that you lean on and that you learn from and that you build your community with is so, so, so important. And you've talked about like finding angel investors and friends and family and building a community within Southeast Asia. Like, how do you go about finding who you want in that community? And like it could be also the employees that you have on your team or the people like is it all mission driven? Are you getting into that or like is it all over the place? Like how are you picking and choosing the people that are kind of like on your team here?
Uh, yeah, at the beginning. when we launched in 2010 was like, 2010 to 2015 was like this really influential time for what we're doing, where companies started to pop up, or you had companies like Patagonia that were just like doing very profound things, or like, marketing campaigns telling people not to buy their clothing, which was like, oh my God, what are these guys doing? Nobody's ever said that, don't buy this jacket. Like, what, like, are they crazy?
Yeah.
Well, it's like, wow, it's cool. Like, you just like think deeper in it. Like, nobody could believe that, they were making these statements or these types of campaigns. And I thought it was so cool, and so I looked up to Yvon Chouinard, or, companies like Patagonia at the time, through that era. And then as time goes on, I, of course, still look up to them, but uh, responsible fashion is evolving and it's going in its own direction. So now it's all about um, you know, having your story as a baseline, but how are you going to influence people in a different way, or get them to like legitimately want your product and legitimately feel cooler wearing it, not just because it's recycled, right? So that's where we are now. It's like, as things slowly become the norm of having a responsibly made product, how are you going to go back to the way that brands were before it was recycled, right? So just being cool, or just
Yeah.
um, having a sticky, you know, tagline or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
so I guess, maybe I digress from your original question, but now for us, it's like finding our people, whether it's our customers, or people that work for us. It's um, it's profiling down to the values, kind of like a checklist. Like, if you're going shopping,
Yeah.
like, what are you looking for? Like, we can kind of like size you up, or we're like ask you questions about yourself. Like, okay, cool, you're on board. Like, we're on the same page here. Like, let's do something.
Yeah. How does e-commerce fit into that? I know you were talking about how you're focusing on building a community within Southeast Asia and having your brick and mortar stores located in that general area probably helps that. But we also live in a time where you've got the ability to touch everyone and get in front of everyone in the entire planet. Like it has that changed the landscape of what you do, or are you still kind of focused on these specific areas, or has it changed and evolved over time?
Yeah, it's definitely, for us, it's changed and evolved over time. When we launched, we were hardcore, like, let's blow up California, and the US market is the holy grail, and that's what we're going for.
Yeah.
Because myself and my business partner were both American, um, and we had the connections, and uh, we wanted to scale up and to open up every retailer. But then you realize quickly, in order to do that, it obviously costs a lot of money. There's a lot of competition. So it's just been navigating our way through it and pivoting left and right to find new ways. Jumping, honestly, jumping on the latest trends. Whether it's like, had been doing trade shows to get the attention of wholesalers, to open an REI, or to get on the Macy's website, or whatever, to get in front of people, or to give a talk in the right place, or to mail product to Wirecutter at New York Times, in order to get a boost up. Like, it's just, we've had to do scrappy things. E-commerce has always been a top priority, um, because it, it's the best way at the highest margin, right?
Yeah.
It's got its challenges in this day and age when it comes to advertising, and how to like really quantify your margins when you get into like working with ad agencies and buying, advertising, email marketing, and the frequency that's required of that, and the content generation. It's a lot of work, but that's what we do. So Amazon, we do sell on Amazon. We sell mainly direct at Indosole.com. We still sell wholesale in the USA to numerous retailers, and like I mentioned before, we export to various areas of the world.
Yeah. Um, I I keep going back to as you're talking, like everything seems to be so driven by the mission, which is fantastic. And like going back to what are you meant to be doing here? Who are you helping? How are you kind of using how the universe put you here? And I just think that's so admirable to be able to like take your company and find a way to do something positive with it. What do you think, from your perspective of being in this world for so long, what do you think prevents other big companies and other big brands to chase, even if we're just talking about like environmentally friendly or sustainably manufactured goods, like what are those big hurdles that are preventing other companies from incorporating those things into their daily practices?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it spans anywhere from um, having to invest in making a change to reduce margin to laziness. I
Mm,
think like
yeah.
sheer laziness may be a big one, but the manipulation of oil and petroleum industries and um, just depending on what your products are, I think that's a big one. Um, but it's technical. I mean, it comes down to manufacturing as well. Like, for us to find a manufacturer, to find a supplier that would change its methods to produce our product was tough because many of them can't be bothered or it's based on volume. So
Mm,
if you're of a perfectly functioning factory and you're making, let's call it a million pairs of shoes or sandals a year, and these people show up at the door saying, "Hey, we want you to take us on as a client in your factory, but we want you to, work with us to grind down tires, make a mold, stamp them out, and do all this other, you know, sustainable stuff." Most of them are going to say, why would we? Like, you know what I mean? Like, unless you bring me an order of a million pair, then I'm not going to look at you. And we weren't bringing that. Um, so it's, like I said before, it's a process of elimination, I think, and just finding, the right people that were into it, that were, down for the mission, down for making change. And I think a big part of it is in here in Indonesia, so it comes from the supplier level to, again, the people that work, for the company, and then to the customer, of course, the investor as well. Um, you know, it's it's a profile.
yeah, I I just wrote down that's a really tricky balance between like targeting a gap in the market to actually like being able to logistically make it happen. Like it's so great that you're fulfilling this need because not a ton of manufacturers are doing it. But I imagine that that makes it so tough because you're one of the few that are doing this, that there's not a lot of like
Mm.
skill and setup to be able to do that. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like, can Nike do it? Of course they can do it. They can do it in 2 seconds, but
Yeah.
maybe they can't be bothered, or maybe they haven't had somebody in the company to take the initiative, or maybe they're just having too much trouble keeping up with making Air Jordans all day long, So it's like there's every company's got its excuse why they're not doing more for the planet or using more recycled content. But at the end of the day, it's typically an excuse.
Yeah. I'm always trying to think of like, okay, so how do we change that? Is it just like increasing demand by like trying to make it a cool trend so that like more manufacturers will have the capability of doing it? Or is the key truly like finding the areas like you're talking about in Indonesia, like find the areas that are actually doing it and be like, okay, that's my group, that's who my crew, that's who we got to get into.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. It snowballs too. So it's like
Yeah.
once you're in the vein of like these types of people, it's like, oh, hey, there's this person, there's that, and then like suddenly you start piecing it together and finding what you need, or it's a small industry still. So um,
Yeah.
our philosophy too is to partner with those that are pushing the envelope, that are like making really rad stuff without us having to develop it on our own and compete, right? Which is what a big company would do. If you're, the biggest company is like, oh, we'll just, great idea. We'll just go do that ourselves. Like, get out of here, So like, again, any of these big companies could do the tire thing. They probably would just do it on their own rather than call us, but we'd rather call other suppliers instead of so for example, we work with some that are using recycling textile. They're taking container loads full of t-shirts and just pulverizing them down to fibers and then respooling them into thread and making beautiful material out of it. So it's like they already have the recycled textile, like let's buy from them, use their material in our footwear, in our straps, and then we'll find a collective female weavers that are weaving materials, and we'll get material from them, and then some of it we can create on our own with other people. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
I, going back to just how much you all have learned and evolved through this entire process, I imagine that that's not going to stop. You're going to continue to take all of the lessons learned and all of those things and apply it in the future. Where where do you see either or both? Where do you see the business and yourself like going in the future? Like what are your next kind of like mountains to climb there?
Yeah. Well, we've made a lot of mistakes over the years, and when it's come to taking product into different directions that we didn't have business taking it into, like we tried to launch an apparel line, we tried to launch a closed toe shoe line. We're like, okay, well,
Yeah.
um, this, it wasn't our talent. So right now we're just sticking with sandals, and we're making sandals primarily. This year, with one of our partnerships, which is a really special one with this group, you should check out, called Sungai Watch. It's Sungai Watch. See, this French family that grew up here in Bali, and they started cleaning the rivers. So a lot of the trash comes from in like the inner land that comes out the rivers into the oceans. And we're talking like mounds of plastics, tons of anything from like, baby diapers to like, um, parts of, just big chunky plastics, and then a lot of flip-flops too. For some reason, flip-flops are the number four item that are coming out in the tropical
Crazy.
climate, which is what all the people wear. Um, and they're coming out. So they take the flip-flops, they store them for us, we make them into stuff, they save the plastics for somebody else, and they take them, but we get all the flip-flops. There's like literally a mountain of flip-flops. So we work with them to then clean the flip-flops and then pulverize those down to a granule, and there's all this great stuff you can make out of these upcycled flip-flops. So we're working on the first 100% upcycled yoga mat. So that's kind of our mission for this year, is to make this yoga mat um, out of flip-flops that come from the river. And we have prototypes, and they're going to be pretty cool. So that is, just one example, of an evolution as a solutions company, beyond just footwear, because the footwear game is tough. So um, I think for us, rather than go closed toe right now, we'd rather make a yoga mat, or to make, some necessary but more basic products.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that upcycled yoga mat.
Hmm.
I'll be keeping
Hmm.
my eye out for that to come out.
Yeah.
For other potential founders or people who are interested in kind of getting into that same niche that you're in, whether it is sustainable manufacturing, whether it's something that's just eco-friendly or just in general, like being a startup, what advice do you have for people who are like just trying to get from idea to actually beginning and starting?
Yeah, I think you brought up an interesting point earlier. Like, people are generally concerned about, oh, what if this doesn't work? What if that doesn't work? If you're a real entrepreneur, you don't really think about that. You can't think about that. You got to go.
Yeah.
You got to go, but at the same time, like you have to do your homework and you have to crunch the numbers to make sure it is viable in some way. Because if you don't, if you don't have a margin there to make money, then yeah, you can be a nonprofit and make products and donate them or however it goes.
Yeah.
Um, but you do have to have a balance between just going forward and crunching your numbers and finding the margin. So you need a good finance person on your team, which
Yeah.
I was not, which I was just the mentality of go, go, go. We're going to figure this out, which served a purpose to a point, and then you gotta bring in somebody who has got the spreadsheets for days.
Did you always know that about yourself, that you weren't like the pro at the finance and the spreadsheet part of it, but you were like good at the ideas and inception, or is that something that you like learned the hard way along the way?
I had to learn it the hard way, but
Ugh,
I always knew it would be my weak point. I was terrible at math as a student and didn't want to deal with the numbers.
yeah,
Questionably a little dyslexic when it comes to the numbers. But
same.
you're right, yeah. But we was just yeah, just pushing off a passion. Just like, okay, if it, I believe in myself to sell. I love selling. I love talking
Yeah,
to people. Okay, if we can make a product, somebody can work with me to make this product, and I can influence it, then we can get it to market, and then we just start selling, and we'll figure out the rest, right?
yeah,
Um, and again, that works to an extent, but then you gotta you gotta start just planning out projections and then finance and all that.
yeah. And then the needs like evolve over time as well. My older sister, I live in Louisville, Kentucky now, and I moved here because my older sister is also here. And I wanted to be closer to her for a little while. And she, a few years ago, started her own nonprofit for the first time. And she's an occupational therapist, had not ever been in really like the businessy world in any way, like just was very therapy focused, was very education focused, and then jumped in and started this nonprofit. Also, just go getter, going a million miles an hour. Like, came from idea, next day had paperwork filled out, was like just hitting the ground running. And I'm running behind her, being like, what about a business plan? What about a budget? What about all these other things? But one of the things that she and I constantly talk about is like, where can we find like the right people to plug in? She's like, well, just here, we've got people. And I'm like, okay, but let's nail down into skills. Like, okay, we need a marketing person, we need a finance person, we need the secretary, like that can be really good at like writing up all of our notes and everything. And she's just like, okay, great. Well, I'm gonna go find more clients. I'm gonna go do this. And it has been cool to like watch that evolve into now she's a few years in and she's got this like group around her that's starting to like move together and like really kind of like get things going. And it's much easier now to be able to be like, okay, now we have a clear gap in this area, and now we have a clear gap in this area, and we can kind of target those things. It's fun though.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's impressive.
Uh,
She's on it.
I mean, you talk to her in like 5 years. I'm sure that she's gonna start like 17 more things. She's just like all over the place, which is great. We need people like that. Um, in kind of thinking about, I like kind of commandeered that a minute. But in kind of thinking about like who else is doing what in the world, that's my last question that I have for everyone. And it can be, this answer can be like super wide ranging. And it's just what's another business or who's another leader that you see out in the world like doing things the right way. And it can be everything from an old boss of yours, a mentor, a coworker, or a company that you're a customer of. It can be absolutely anything or anyone.
Yeah, I would probably go back to talk this group that I that I mentioned called Sungai Watch here in Bali. I mean, just in my current moment, I'm just so impressed as to what they have done. I mean, this is three people under 30 years old who have grown was a nonprofit to like 300 people cleaning out these rivers all over the place and then opening these sorting centers to take all the trash, all the waste, and then clean it and then redistribute it out to be made into things, through various channels. And um, like my business partner likes to call it modern day mining, which
Mhm.
is could potentially be a big part of the future and an economic boom of the future where we get to a point where we can't make more virgin materials or it just doesn't make sense to. I mean, there's a rumor that says there's already enough clothing in the world to clothe everybody. Like we don't really need to be just pumping out more and more clothing.
Yeah.
And it's so wasteful. So these new age technologies of turning our waste into value are going to be more and more important in this group. Um, are have gone from just like a community impact to now having the president of Indonesia speaking to them and implementing plans and promising a countrywide plastic ban by 2026. So we'll see if it happens. Um, but they're able to make enough noise to get the ear of the leader of one of the most pollutant countries in the world. So
Yeah, that
pretty
is
neat.
amazing. Do you know if there are any other countries right now that are, I mean, I'm just asking you to be Google right now, but do you know if there are any other countries that have a total plastic ban?
Um, no, I mean, I think the Scandinavian countries are probably the closest at the moment.
Yeah,
Um, but the countries that really need to do it are the are the one these like
yeah,
basically the big four in this region that are just pumping it out. We'll see. Like we'll see if it's possible. It's got to start small. Like, it starts with just water bottles, like no more plastic water bottles.
yeah,
And there's dispensers and everybody's carrying around their own water bottle. Boom, step one. And then food would be step two. Like there's not going to be it's not going to happen overnight, but
yeah. Oh, wow. That's amazing. That's really like turning a big, giant physical problem into something like really, truly cutting edge if they're able to do that. That's amazing. Which is also
mhm.
essentially what you guys have done.
Yeah, at a micro level, again, like our mission is, we sell sandals, but our goal is to get people thinking, is to just get the wheels turning and have people be more aware by learning about the Indosole story, but then becoming more aware of the waste around them or the fact that, products can be made into other things, like it could circular economy and just personal conservation as well.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here and talking with us. This has been a real blast, and I wish you all the best. I'm so excited to see what you'll
Sure.
do in the future.
Yeah, likewise. Really appreciate you reaching out. Thanks, Andrea.
Folks, thanks so much for listening to the Capitalism for Good project. Just a quick reminder that this project is supported through patreon.com/capitalism for good. There are weekly between the interviews episodes, early releases of interviews, merch, and other bonuses for those that subscribe through the Patreon. Support allows for this project to continue to move forward without the potential bias of traditional ads. Thank you so much for anyone that's already in that community and for anyone considering joining. As always, please let me know what you think, and also if you have any recommendations for leaders that you see out there making a positive impact on their internal and external communities. I would love to shine a spotlight on your favorite folks. All right, that's enough. Let's go leave this place better than we found it.